Hello, everyone. Welcome to another awesome day of FileMaker Training. I'm Richard Carlton, creator of fmtraining.tv, where every day, Monday through Friday, at this time slot, whatever time that is for you, we are doing great FileMaker training and learning. In fact, a lot of the times I'm learning. So it's a lot of all people in the community coming together at this location. It's very exciting. If we take a look at the broadcast schedule for today, a reminder, we are broadcasting in high definition on YouTube, Twitch, and Discord simultaneously, so you can be watching on any one of those. You can ask questions. Today is a really good question day for you to ask questions. Primarily around FileMaker Server would be really awesome because that's the focus of today's conversation. If you go to fmtrain.tv, you press the Live tab button. You'll pop down on the screen right here. We're updating the UI on this, but it's really cool because this web page, it's powered by FileMaker. It's so awesome. It's a phrase I use, we eat our own dog food. Let me pivot forward today and introduce our guest topic people here. We have Doug Wallis from yesterday. He is the product manager for FileMaker Server and I guess other things. Is your role expanding at Claris, Doug? Are you doing more stuff these days?
No, essentially now I'm pretty much working on the pro side and a bit on the server and cloud, but most of my work is around the pro work now.
Okay. So the Pro PM and then, okay, great. Yeah, because when I first met you, were doing more server-related PM
Yep.
stuff, so that's cool. All right, well, to be honest with you, it's the number one stuff that we use every day. I'm using Pro and Server all day, every day, so you're one of the more important people I know. Now, we went into the Potrero 4 building here, and we flipped over the hidden rooms where all the engineers hide, and we found Connor Brock. Connor Brock's been with us before. He is one of the stealth engineers here. He doesn't talk to customers that terribly often, I don't think, but we want to welcome him here because he gives us some under the hood answers about questions we might have, right? And so Doug is kind of one part of the company. It's like the planning. Like in my life, I'm mostly a PM myself. I don't get to do as much engineering anymore, but the smart people like Doug and I always know to bring the smart people with us to the meeting just in case there's hard questions, and that's what Connor's here to help us with. So we're going to be going through the interface, the changes with FileMaker Server 2024. As a quick reminder, if this is your first exposure to 2024, it shipped yesterday morning. It's in the big scheme of things, everything that you still have the new Pro, we have a new FileMaker Server, we have a new Go, WebDirect still in there. So all the things you've kind of come to know to rely upon are still in there. They're just with less bugs and more secure and better and faster and all that kind of stuff. So do we want to hand off control to Mr. Wallis? And we can start off with, I guess, a little bit of a keynote presentation and then dive into real demos.
So good afternoon or good evening, depending where you are. I'm actually based in Europe. Today I'm actually talking from Berlin because there is a conference of FileMaker developers. So I went to see them and it's going to be really great. So tonight we're going to focus on FileMaker Server 2024. I'm going to go through some of the slides that I went through yesterday, but I just want to make sure that if people weren't there yesterday, at least actually have the messaging that Claris is putting out there around the work that we've done for FileMaker 2024. And then Connor is going to basically, like Richard was saying, is go through the admin console and give you some pointers and explanation on some of the work that we've done and why we think it's really important for our community to be aware of what we've done. So the messaging around FileMaker Server 2024 is for us to bring native support for certificates and optimize the console control, which means administrator can do more things more securely with less hassle. We're not going to go into sort of Let's Encrypt because we're going to have a great session tomorrow with Wim de Court, who's going to go through how it works, how you set it up. But essentially, if you've never heard of Let's Encrypt, do a quick search on Google and you'll understand why it's actually such a great feature to actually have inside the product. And there's going to be an hour session tomorrow going through that. The work we're going to do and what we're going to basically focus today is the admin console and all the sort of small enhancements we brought to the product to make your life when you're administrating the FileMaker server easier for you to actually go through. One of the first aspect is around scheduling. So in the previous version of FileMaker, there were different areas where you could actually control how you wanted to do your scheduling, whether it's around the backups, running system scripts. We've all sort of kind of changed that. So there's one view for the admin people to be able to actually control all of that. There's a few more sort of quick updates that we've done. Connor will show you on the admin console, but essentially the idea is we want to make it easier for people to actually use FileMaker Server admin console. Like I've said in a lot of meetings before that, we want to make the admin console and the management of FileMaker Server boring. You set it up, you get it up and running. While it's out there, up and running, you don't really need to actually sort of spend your life going through it. All you need to do is go through the logs when you have issues, but everything should work really nicely so that you actually don't actually worry too much about what it can do. This is a quick view basically of the admin console. We're going to go through in details around what you can do with it. But basically, like I said, it has to be boring. Sadly, it's part of the work that we don't want people to actually spend ages on it. We want people to create great solution, great custom apps by using FileMaker Pro. Other things we've done around is the application lifecycle management part of it. I'm pretty sure Wim's going to talk about it when he does his session and the QA sessions. What we're doing is we are adding new tools to make it even easier for people to be able to have a vision of really doing application lifecycle management properly inside of FileMaker. So a great aspect of FileMaker is you can do live coding. Everyone loves that. You have a solution, it's on the server. You do your changes to your layout, to your scripts live. Customers can see it. They really like it. But in a proper world, when you want to make sure that before you actually release your updates to your layouts, to your scripts, you want to be able to actually sort of test that. So the idea is to have a FileMaker server, development, testing environment, and a production one. But one of the things that's really painful in FileMaker is if you do the work in a developer environment, and when you transfer information back into your production, in a lot of cases, you had to actually do the work manually, and that was kind of boring. And so we created tools over the last, I would say, 5 to 6 years to make it easier to be able to transfer data from a development environment into a production environment. So we have the Save as XML feature inside of FileMaker where you export your FileMaker code into an XML file, and then you can patch basically into another files. We've added a lot more options around layout objects and how they get managed. We've added new features inside the API to make the whole process a lot better. And we have this FileMaker developer tool, which essentially is the developer utilities that you can find in FileMaker Pro that you can actually use now through the command line programs. And so you can start scripting basically how you do the updates, and it gives you a lot more power. So the idea is for really people to actually pick up on the idea that even though the easiest way to do development FileMaker is doing it live, but it's better in a lot of cases to actually have an environment where you can do programmatically and using a lifecycle management. So marketing spiel is done. We're going to go now basically through the admin console with Connor to actually show you features that we've enhanced, new features that we actually implemented, go through some of the vision that we're actually creating so that you get a better understanding of why we're actually doing the work and how it's going to benefit your development. So over to you, Connor. Again, I think there's going to be a lot of questions. We'll just basically do those as soon as they come along.
Thank you, Doug. I don't know, Richard, if you imagine this would be better for me to just, share something on my side, or I'm also just happy to talk through.
Yeah, absolutely. Just play it that way, and then we'll start threading questions. And as you get going, you're going to share your screen, and I'll talk just for a moment here. The lifecycle management stuff that Rick and Doug and the rest of Claris have been working on it's been in progress for a long time. I remember the first bits of it in FileMaker 17, and it's not fully complete yet. So I think it's in progress. These are incremental updates and improvements to it. The reason, for those of you who are kind of new to the FileMaker platform, I'll just cover this real quick. The reason we do development live, if you haven't figured this out, and Margaret, maybe you've never asked yourself this, but because doing it live is so easy because we don't have to wrestle with what do you do, how do you make the change here and then move it over there. It's not very easy to move it over there. The reason we would never do that, it was such a pain in the ass to work offline and make it live. And what Claris is doing is they're going down this road where you work on it, you test it, and essentially, however this happens, you're going to press a button and those changes thread themselves. You start getting a beach ball, start spinning, and it processes and it pushes these changes live into your solution. And that's where this goes. So while we like to use it live because it gives us that ability and we don't have to kill ourselves thinking about, well, we got to import the data and move the solution, this and that and the other. The idea that Claris is doing with the lifecycle management is make that super simple. So the days of wanting to do it live may be less urgent, less often, if we have a really smooth tool. one of the people yesterday asked about this, and he kept saying, well, he didn't answer the question and about Rick and the lifecycle management. And what Claris is saying is that they are working on programming and debugging and rolling out of the product, but with each release, it gets better. And some of the stuff Claris is going to build, some of it are third-party tools that are going to be built, right? So the automatic and these various other 360 deploy, all these other products, leverage off of that to make it easier and more better, not great English, but it's more better, right? And eventually it's going to become really smooth, and I'm looking forward to that. And so anyway, just to kind of help that conversation and what Doug is talking about, but to the point where it's easier maybe to do it offline and to make it live as opposed to doing it on a live file. So anyway, all right,
Thanks.
Connor.
Yeah. I guess just to take through, some of the admin console changes that I'm most excited about here. Doug mentioned or had on his screen the schedules. I'd say this is the area that we've made the most changes to this time around. So we have everything in a list here, and I'll create some sample schedules to show. But
do me a favor. Where was it before? Let's go. So start at the beginning. Go to the dashboard at the beginning.
So the location of the schedules has not changed. It's still in configuration schedules.
Okay.
I guess but the main thing that's different here is all the schedule types are now consolidated into one place. It used to be that backup schedules were only visible here.
There were 4 of them here, right? There were 4 down there, 4 items down there, and one of them was the.
And so now you can still do some backup management, see some backup information here, but the place you go to create and edit those, all the schedule types is all in one spot now. So let's create one, and I'll just show what that looks like. And
that looks good.
Yeah. All right.
There we go.
So I got a backup schedule. Let's run it. Let's create a second one as well. Let's do just the main folder there. And we've got all the frequency type of controls here. Pickers, just showing off the UI a little bit. Let's run this one too. So having your schedules here, you can sort and filter on all of these columns just like you would with like the log viewer. So it's very similar controls to that. So I can just tap to sort on those columns. And if I want to filter something, there we go. And then you can reset all filters. But now that I've run both of these schedules, I just want to take a quick hop back to the backups pane. That what we used to have here was information just on the default backup schedule, the schedule ID 0 that you couldn't change or remove. But we wanted to make this space more useful to show information for any of your backups, no matter where they came from. And so there's a couple of drop-down lists that have been added. That default schedule is still available here. We call it FMS, but you can see that I can now find some information about the backup schedules that I created. You can see how often it repeats, how many I have set to keep. You can still do the backup now and the cancel from here. And on this list, the same drop-down list exists. I can see from all or from a particular one. And this is where you can choose which ones you want to preserve.
Real quick, so we got questions that are coming in, so we're going to kind of start talking along this. So I'm going to slow you down a little bit. So
please,
first thing that goes into it for everyone to understand is that when you schedule something in FileMaker, on FileMaker Server, it could be a backup. It could back up certain things. It can back up certain things to a certain destination.
Mm-hmm.
It could also run not a backup, it could do other server related maintenance and items. And so some of the people here on this live stream are newer. If you want to, go back up to the, you got the FileMaker script, right? There's a FileMaker script.
Yeah.
So this is what we call SASE, server assisted script execution. This is like PSOS, except this one's on a schedule. If you click up there at the top real quick on the schedule type, left top right there, hold there. So you got FileMaker script, system operating level scripts, script sequence, which is a bunch of things. We have a backup, which is basically what most of us think about here. And then we have verify. So just for fun and games, what is can you explain to us what verify does?
Yeah, it pauses the file and performs like a consistency check on it to make sure that the file integrity is still there, and will let you know if you need to like run a recovery on that file,
Okay.
or if it detects problems.
So it could be time intensive depending on the size of the file. So not something you would do in the middle of the busy day, but maybe at night, midnight or something.
That's the general recommendation. Do it
Cool.
between busy hours. Yeah.
Busy hours. All right. So
Mhm.
David Angel was asking if you do a backup, does the backup have to go onto what do you say, the boot drive? Backup target folder is still on the same machine. Oh, he's asking if you can target
Yeah. So that's a great question.
a network drive, I
Yeah.
guess.
So the network, I think it's not recommended to back up to a network drive, but you can certainly pick other mounted drives. I don't think there's any inherent thing blocking you from doing this to a network drive, but I'm recalling back from my support days that maybe we had some recommendation against it. But the options that you'll see here in the list for where to back up to are going to just reflect or I guess the question is, where to back up to. It's just going to
they're mounted drive. They're local drives theoretically, right? For the most part.
So you can change that here as long as it's a valid file path. You can back up to it.
Someone's asking about script sequence. Can you select script sequence and show us that briefly?
Yeah. So script sequence is sort of stringing together some of the other schedule types. So at the middle, I guess you could say, we have and I think maybe this
okay.
isn't quite well segregated, but at its base level, I think you can think of a FileMaker script that you're running, and then you can choose before or after that FileMaker script, you can run a system script.
It's a sandwich. There's bread. There's the don't move. You're messing my graphic up. There we go.
You had it. There
we go. And then there's the meat in the sandwich, unless you're a vegan, and then it's like lettuce or something, right? And then down here is the other side of the bread, right? So bread, sandwich, bread, or bread, cheese, bread, or bread, lettuce, bread, right? All right. Next question, Margaret.
Oh, I have one which is probably kind of silly. Preceding system script parameter, is it pulling like the parameter out of a FileMaker script, or is it a server-side parameter? That's very poorly phrased, but I don't quite understand.
So that's hard-coded, and that's not dynamic, right? Right here, I'm assuming. Yeah. Okay.
Right. That's right. Yeah. And so, but this is because it's the system script. That you're just feeding it a parameter.
And then the script. So you have the database, and you have the script name here. Then optional parameter. I think once again that's going to be hard-coded as well.
That's right.
Believe. Yeah.
We have more parameter questions, so I'm just going to fire them off real fast.
Read them off, Margaret.
Taylor, which did a very smart rephrasing of my fumble attempt. What is the preceding script parameter being sent to?
To this preceding system script.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Those are operating. Those are operating system level things that are happening there, right? So.
Right. And what you're seeing here is the list of like the built-in pre-made system scripts, but anything you add to the scripts folder in FileMaker Server will show up in this list too. So that's really more what the parameters are for, is anything you add to this.
Yeah, I think the operative thing here, understanding, is this is system script, and down here this has script name. This is FileMaker script right here. If I was doing UI, I would say the word FileMaker script. Well, you get the idea, because they're using the word script in both places, but it's not super clear. Because all of us do these. We do these all day. Most of us don't ever do these. Does that make sense? So.
Yeah. And I think that, maybe it's a good time to say that this big redesign of schedules was, mostly driven by feedback that we popular demand that, we needed, to make it easier to edit and do bulk operations and things like that. And so there's a whole lot of UI change here that we still are open to feedback about. I think like you said, this is maybe a good point that this could be misinterpreted about what that means. I'm not in any way complaining. I think this is a huge upgrade. I just point out the fact that when people see the word script, they assume that we're talking about FileMaker ones, and these system means operating system. So if you're on Windows, right,
it's a Windows script. Would you write that in PowerShell? What would you write that in? I don't even know.
For Windows, that's right.
Yeah. So,
or it could be a batch script. Yeah.
Okay.
So
That kind of stuff. All right. Other questions, Margaret? I'm sure we have other questions, or is that it for the moment?
We are good for the moment, so you're
All
feeling
right.
let me just go ahead take the moment to say that like the cool things that we wanted to accomplish here is that in the previous iteration, if you wanted to edit a schedule, you had to click like the change button and then expand it and then click another button and then to save those changes, do something similar. This is inline editing. I just double click and here's my editing and I can just do it that way. And
Double
so,
click. I get my double click back. Thank you.
yeah.
I'm clapping for you. Thank you.
And so
Yeah.
I'm just going to bulk operate and duplicate all these just to show that this is just a continuous list. It doesn't paginate. You can, if you want to see a smaller iteration, this is where you take advantage of the filters that are there.
Okay.
You can also click this little gear icon over here to determine which columns you want to look at. And so this is customizable. You can also, even though there's a little bit of a highlighting thing that happens, you can rearrange the schedule order, and all of this is cached in your session, like in the browser. So if I leave and come back, it will remember my customizations. So
that's very nice. Real quick on a question we just got. Question is, I've heard there may be some SSL updates. Have you talked about that already? We are talking about SSL tomorrow, for the most part, unless there's more to the Let's Encrypt conversation. Connor, do we want to just save that for tomorrow?
Yeah, so I guess I'm thinking if there's anything about SSL other than Let's Encrypt that's worth mentioning here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's mostly
so that's a
what
tomorrow
it is.
conversation for whoever asked that. So Wim DeCourt from Soliant will be here with me and Jacob Taylor. We will be taking that apart tomorrow. So that'll be exciting because that itself is a brand new capability that's never existed before in FileMaker. So we're going to have to step by step through it pretty slowly.
Okay, I thought of one thing. I think this is new to this version. When you create certificate sign requests, you can pick an ECC elliptic curve to create that under. So I don't think that was there before. Anyway, that's the only thing I can think of.
Cool. What other things about this server should we know about?
We made some changes to admin roles as well. And I don't know if I have a real good demo of it here, but the limitation of admin roles previously was that each role you create has to have its own base home folder, and there's no sharing involved and no hierarchies allowed. And we just removed those limitations. So now you can have a role that owns let me just demo here. So I'm going to create one called main, and I'm going to have this own just the root databases folder.
Okay.
And before this wouldn't have been allowed because I already have two other roles that have subfolders of databases, but now it doesn't matter. And so what I could do is I can even have A and B both pointing to the same folder, in fact. And I could just give them different varying permissions here if I wanted to give some people more access than others. So
look, can I jump in and help a little bit here with this?
Yeah.
So demo wise with this is where when this first came out and then it was removed for a while, we called them baby administrators. The idea, so the person can still log into FileMaker Server, this interface. They still log in here, correct? But they are limited. So the idea is like you have a sales team and you have an engineering team and maybe a finance team, and they have their own databases. And so you'd have instead of A, so say it'd be sales and marketing and engineering, and they would each have control of their own file, if that makes sense, right?
That's right.
So that because between you and me and the wall, I don't want the sales guys touching the rest of the databases, and that goes at Claris and as well as at my company. The sales guys are their own special breed of people. Sales guys, sales gals. That personality is a little bit nuts, and you don't want them in the middle of deciding what the priorities are for engineering, right? Because they will adjust that. So, and I mean that with all. I have one that works for me, and Claris has a bunch, and they are a very interesting personality. So, show us. So we logged in. Are we logged in as A?
Yeah.
Is that what we did?
I logged in as A, and you can
Okay.
see that I just have visibility on the files that I have ownership of. I can still operate on them, and I should have in the demo uploaded more than one file here to show
That's
you
fine.
that you can do bulk operations now on the files that you own, and that did not used to be possible either. And it will only operate on your files and leave everybody else's alone. And same for schedules. I can create an A schedule here, and I just have access to the
one file.
one file.
So if the sales team was their interface, then that database would probably say sales_CRM or something, or whatever that would be. And that'd be their database. So they can back it up, they can restore it, they can manage it without interfering with anyone else. But everyone's on the same corporate server, the same piece of hardware. So.
Yeah, that's right. Let me get back into my root account here.
So now you're the full administrator as opposed to someone was offended that I was talking down to them. Well, you're going to be a baby administrator. You can't call me a baby. Well, okay, you're a diminished administrator with less talent. I don't know what you want to call it, but yeah, they can do less.
UI-wise, yeah, we log viewer is mostly all the same, except now you can have this collapsed sidebar and get sort of full real estate usage.
Can I ask a dumb question? And this is not a feature request. It's a feature request.
Okay.
Why is this so spread out between the lines? I mean, because any text editor that you're looking at it'd take forever to get through this thing. And I'm just asking out loud,
I see. So like if you, for example, by comparison, if you import a log into FileMaker table view, there's hardly any white space at all between lines.
Yeah, text. This is just kind of very spacey and whatever. That's fine. I just asked a question because we're looking at lights of logs and you have to scroll for miles and this makes it worse. So, but I like the fact there's not page 1, page 2. It's just an infinite list for the most part.
That's it. Yeah.
That is a cool thing. I like that.
Yeah. And so, yeah, log viewer itself isn't new. The only new part this time is this ability to have full real estate of it. So expand, collapse. I think that actually does cover the admin console UI new stuff, but I'm happy to talk about other things too.
We will. I do have a question right here. It says this. So the question's about schedules and once again, these administrative roles. So are the schedule names unique per role or are they global? So the question is if you set up a schedule called backup and then your sales people come in and they want to schedule a schedule called backup.
Yeah.
They're not unique names. What happens?
Yeah, I think that will be a problem. I think it doesn't matter if it's which role created it. You've got to give it a unique name. But we can just see what happens here. Enable to create schedule. Of course, I'm still as the full one, but let's just give it a go.
Yeah, it's one of those things that. You saw the warning message, everyone down there at the bottom. When you went down there to say save, it said, hey, the name's not unique. Of course, the person won't know why it was taken if they didn't create it, right? So
that's right.
Okay, there we go. So enter a unique schedule name. They're like, what the hell? Yeah. That's just, if you gave someone instructions, you would just tell them that any schedules you create, start it with sales _, marketing _, something like that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just talking about logistics, not from your perspective, Connor, but from a training perspective.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense.
Okay, so back to super admin, and then I want to ask about the new stuff, one of which was the persistent cache. What is it, and why should I care about it?
I guess the persistent cache it's been
in there for a while, but
I guess you're right. That is new UI. We had the settings that were available through the CLI before, but now there is these toggles. And so what it is anything that's uncommitted data, that hasn't actually been written to the file yet. It's in the cache. That cache is now no longer just exists in the FileMaker process. It can exist in memory, in the machine memory outside of the database server. And so if the database server does crash, then that cache is still there now if persistent cache is on. And so database server can start back up and just continue where it left off in committing those changes.
Can you, stop. I want you to go back and restate that sentence carefully, like an attorney with the little apostrophes on it.
Okay.
Because what people heard you say, if FileMaker crashes, or explodes into flames and we restart it, then this will magically find all the unsaved data and put it in. That's what they heard you say. Okay.
Yeah. So before, the uncommitted data you could think of as, under the umbrella of the database server.
Sure.
That if the database server crashes, you've lost all those changes. So that's the old paradigm.
Okay.
With persistent cache enabled, that cache is still there in RAM, in your machine memory, even if the database server process suddenly stops, whether, that's a crash or it just, you stopped it. But I guess we are talking about crashes here in the end. But when you start it back up, it's going to check if that cache is still there, and you'll.
Oops, we might have lost Connor briefly here. Margaret, are you there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Yeah,
Art's
still
here.
there.
Oh, is he? Yeah, if he comes back, he could talk. That's not really a problem.
I'll just go through it. So basically, the idea is you having two caches working together. You have your FileMaker cache inside your FileMaker processes, still run in the system. It basically has a duplicate of that cache, which is the persistent cache. So that lives in your memory. If your FileMaker process, your server side crashes, there's still a copy of that cache inside your RAM. And then when you start up the database engine back again, that cache is going to be sent back to the FileMaker engine, and it's going to basically put back the information to your system.
That's excellent, Douglas. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to expand upon this for people because I can hear their little brains going. What Douglas just said very carefully is if the FileMaker process. So when FileMaker Server is running on a Mac, Windows, or Linux server, there's 7 or 8 processes. A process in your for a layman is like Margaret, you're an intermediate developer. It's like a program. So FileMaker Server, when it's running on one of these servers, is like 7 or 8 programs. They're kind of invisible. They're all running, talking to each other. Does that make sense? Yeah. So what they're saying is the main process is called, I think, FM server. And if that process dies, the machine just doesn't have the power pulled out of the back of it, but that process crashes for some reason. Persistent cache will attempt to, if you tell the FM server process to start again, then the persistent cache will attempt to resuscitate any unsaved data. Does that make sense? So it's a subset of all the bad things. If you have the world of all the bad things that can happen to your FileMaker server, a hurricane hits it, knocks out the power. An alligator bites into it, and explodes it. Electrical sparks everywhere. Tornado grabs it and throws it in the air. All the things that bad that could happen to your FileMaker server. Having that FM server process die is a subset of all the bad things that could happen. So it's not a universal restoration. That's the key to understand, right, Connor?
Yeah, and I'm sorry for dropping again there. You're totally right. And the thing that makes it even cooler is the setting underneath it, persistent cache sync to disk. So
what does that do? What does that do? I have no idea. What does that do?
Sure. What we just said a moment ago is that the cache exists in OS RAM, in the memory, right?
Yep.
If sync to disk is enabled, then that cache in memory is being written to the disk also. And so the idea there is if the power gets pulled on the machine.
Okay.
And so we're talking about more than just the FileMaker server process crashing. If the computer loses power, anything that's written to disk from the cache can be checked and picked back up, just like we were discussing. So it's an optional setting here for the admins to decide what level they want to use, because I think we do expect all of this stuff to have like some mild performance hits, and so the choice is yours to do this. But yeah, this is the most redundancy that you can have, is to have it sync to disk, just in case you have that machine go down.
Now, the flip side of this, and this is what I talked about in our top 10 video, was that these are kind of new. These two options right here are kind of new. And if I crash a FileMaker server, I have this blanket policy that we restore from the last backup, because we know the last backup was made correctly. And if these two are enabled and you pull the plug on the computer and then plug it back in and boot everything up, and we enable the database server auto restart, right? And we enable the auto open of databases. Well, what happens? what happens if it can't put this together, right? I mean, that's the question, right?
Yeah.
I'm asking you, not knowing the answer.
There should be some event log messages that you can check in on to see what succeeded, what didn't succeed here. And so I believe if it detects issues, it'll let you know, just like it always would, when trying to start back a file.
Well,
But, yeah.
normally what it does is if you have a crash file and you restart it and say none of this stuff existed, it's going to do a consistency check, and unless it runs into a major problem, it's just going to roll with it. The problem with the consistency checks are never 100% reliable. They it's like if I go up to Margaret and say, Margaret, how you feeling today? She's like, I'm okay. Well, she might be dying of a heart attack or have a broken arm, but she says she's okay because it's not readily apparent that there's a problem. And so the question is for administrators and as a trainer, I'm like, what do we advise people on with this? Because it's kind of, now we have two choices and I don't know which one's the best one. So anyway.
Yeah, I would say that, what the event log gives us is more data points to be able to make a good decision about that. That, if you're seeing that, this startup process happened correctly, that there was no issue with it, I think, it's, there may not be reason to believe that there's a problem to go forward. But I know that it is a matter of trust at some level, that some admins may decide that any instance at all of this was enough to want to restore from a previous backup. So
yeah, no, I get that. And so this is I think the answer to a lot of this is it's to be determined as we move forward with this new feature and what we trust. We got a lot of questions on this, so I'm gonna hover here. I'm gonna take the first question, answer for everyone, and then next question's harder. I'm gonna give that to you folks. So the first person's asking, what is in the cache? Someone's saying, well, isn't this the stuff they read from the database? So the part that we care about, so when FileMaker has a cache, there'll be some data it reads about the structure and things like that. Some of the cache will be data that the users have changed. That's the part that Claris is interested in. It's the part that wasn't saved, etc. The fact that a layout looks a certain way, if it hasn't been changed, that part of the cache we don't care about, to be clear. So when we're talking about cache here, we're talking about changes that somehow a user made that we care about. So that's that. I'm going to take that question and answer it. Next question we have, here we go, Connor. Okay, this is a really big question, so I'm going to let you, there's multiple, you have to peel this onion back. I'm going to ask this, give it to you as it was asked. How long cache data exists before it's pushed to the server is the question.
Yeah, I think, as you browse through layouts, there's implicit commits that happen just as a virtue of clicking around. And so I think that's really what it is contingent on is, when did the last commit happen? And that's the data that's getting pushed and written to the disk.
Well,
Is that the right direction?
Well, so there's caches at the client level. So and so we're not really talking about that per se. What we're talking about with this feature is that once the clients, you do some work on the client, and we've talked about this in a lot of our training, so I'm going to kind of set this aside. Once you push the data from the client to the server, it goes into the server cache. That's what this conversation is about, the server-side cache. Right. The server side has it in RAM. It eventually writes it to the drive. I don't know when that happens.
I see. Yeah. A timer. I guess if we're looking for a specific timer value, I'm not afraid I don't know.
Well, if it runs out, first it's got amount of RAM it has. So if it runs out, it's gonna force and push it. This also depends upon the cache settings of your FileMaker server. The point being is that there will always be some cache in it that is exposed to danger if the power gets pulled. That's why we've always said go back to last good backup, because we know it's a great file. It's an FFP12 file. It's in great shape. This is where the persistent cache, the first one there is, I guess, to RAM. It's going to try to resuscitate that. Then the bottom one is going to push the RAM data to disk all the time. It sounds to me like continuously. It doesn't really say that next to it. Connor right there says sync to disk. Right. I'm assuming that's pretty quick, pretty continuous. There might be a performance hit with that, right?
Yeah, I think we're talking about just a matter of a very small interval. Like I've heard, I'm trying to think back to conversations with the team that this may be a matter of like 1 to 2 minutes data loss at the most if you start it back up So maybe that guides us a little bit towards the answer.
Sure. Next question. The second one down on your startup settings, automatically start database server. And then we go to the second from the bottom. No. The first one is that second from the top, that one.
Oh, yeah.
And then that one, second from the bottom. They want to know what's the difference between those two.
Yeah.
Connor, is there an answer here? What is the answer to this one?
So this one is specific to the persistent cache that, if, when persistent cache is running here, do we want it to, try to start everything back as it was? So whereas this one really is more general.
So the first three are basically based on when you first start up your server itself, the hardware. You actually tell it when FileMaker Server startups, I want to automatically start the database engine, database server, the web publishing engine, and open all the files. If you have those deactivated, when you go into the admin console, you manually have to actually start the database server. So that's ahead of actually starting to use FileMaker Server. The bottom one is around when we have a crash of the FileMaker server. If it crashes, we can tell it to automatically restart. Ideally, you need to persistent cache to make sure that it can rebuild the file properly, and so that basically it keeps the consistency of your file intact. The last part of it is really around if it crashes and you're the admin guy and you're not basically on standby, the system basically is going to restart for you automatically in the background without having to actually do any manual work. So we try to build kind of the automation around restarting if FileMaker crashes in the background. Maybe I can understand that in terms of actually the way we've done it, we've put everything under the startup settings. We would need to actually have it separated within a starter setting sections and then a whatever we could call it, like a management of your cache or the FileMaker processes as a different sort of section to make maybe.
Yeah. I would call it crash settings, but then marketing would yell at me
call
about
that crash settings.
In the event your airplane crash, you're not allowed to call it that. Question here: are those quote persistent cache putting the file back together? Is that process going to send log entry, make log entries, and email us? Is the question.
Yes, that's right.
So it will make log entries and it will email us if it does that.
I mean, the email is contingent on an error happening, but it will have log entries.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want to just step down to the bottom one then? I guess that's another one that's new.
Block new users is another one that is here from by request from the community that whenever you have issues where you need to kick everybody out of the server, do some maintenance on it, and before you declare it safe for everyone to rejoin. The big problem that we've heard about is getting everyone actually out of the file, because if you just send like a mass disconnect to all the connected users, they can ignore it. They can just immediately try to come back in, and it just becomes a battle to get everyone actually out of the file to be able to close it and pause it.
Yeah, that would be with the sales team again. They don't want to be stopped from making their deals. So no, seriously, I have a sales guy and he would absolutely ignore you and he would reconnect. Absolutely. Then he'd go, I didn't do that. So the block new users is it doesn't kill everyone who's already connected. It just stops new connections.
It stops new connections. Everyone who's in is still going to be able to use everything normally, including perform script on server. It just prevents new connections from joining. So yeah, you can, once you turn this on, you the next step you can take is to kick everyone else out if you want, and then the database developer can be in the file hosted still as like the only one, and do the maintenance you need to do before you turn this setting back off and let everyone come back in whenever you announce that it's ready. So that's the idea. And it does affect all client types. So the only one that isn't really session-based is OData. The caveat with OData is it's the only client type that isn't really session-based. We have like cached sessions in the background for it that I think are just, a few minutes at the most. And so, what I was saying is that if you were making an OData call recently, like in the last minute, and you suddenly flip on block new users, that OData, you will be able to continue to make those OData calls. But if you haven't used OData in a bit and flip this on, then you'll not be able to send OData calls until it's flipped back off.
We still have questions coming in. We're starting to run out of questions, which is, I guess, good or bad if you folks have 7 minutes left. Okay, so we kind of talked about this, but I guess maybe we didn't answer it so well. So I'm gonna repeat the question, and then Doug or Connor, one of you guys can take a swing at this. How long between data is input into the persistent cache, and when is it committed to the FMP12 file generally? I asked to know because, for example, if it's 10 minutes in there, it only lasts 10 minutes in the cache and then it's pushed forward, then maybe it's not worth it for some customers.
Yeah, the best data I have to share is, and again, this is just from discussions I've had with the team, is that it should be just be a minute or two at the most of data loss if you have the power failure and start back up with persistent cache. So it actually is likely to be more data preserved than restoring from your last backup for that reason.
Yeah, so Paul McCudden says, I thought OData was sessionless. That's what Brock's saying.
That's right. It is. I'm just telling you that behind the scenes, we cache the session for a few minutes just to reduce the performance hit. And so that's why OData has that strange behavior along with block new users. But yeah, there's truly, you're right. It's not really a session. I guess I did use the word session in explaining that.
No, I understand. And I understand what you said, right? So I know it's sessionless, but under the hood, sometimes performance-wise, if it's the system that's driving the OData delivery part of this for everyone is when it comes in to re-authenticate the token or whatever it's doing to update that session, it's going to check this flag down there. And if it's disabled, then it's going to stop them at that point.
Right.
Dennis Burnham, who is, I always go back and forth with him. Between him and me, we're the two grumpy old people in the FileMaker community. This is his feature request. Block new users should be, next to it should be a checkbox to, he wants a way of like better notifying him that it's been restored somehow, service is restored. So I guess the idea is that if you were in a company using Slack, you could send a general company-wide message that the service is back up. I think that's a bigger question of what Dennis is talking about.
Like the send message. But
yeah, except that once they're kicked out, you can't send them a message, right? So
yeah.
Right. So that Dennis is locked onto that, and he's not wrong. He's not wrong, but most organizations would shoot it out a Slack or an email or something. But that's interesting. If you could push notify the FileMaker clients, and that's a big lift and probably never happened, but it's got a point, and that's
something worth thinking on, especially now that we're able to leverage. And this is more of a FileMaker side thing now, the configure local notification being supported on the desktop. I wonder if there's something there. But yeah, it's a great.
I got $100 as you could. I just have to figure out if anyone down there would want to do it. Yeah.
Appreciate it, Dennis. That's good.
Dennis, that's a good one. You get a gold star. That's a good one. Paul McCudden says, how are OData sessions connected to each other via device? That's more of an OData conversation.
Yeah, I guess in terms of what's being cached, I think it is device specific for that.
Yeah, I imagine it's a token on the device. Alex asked another question. With the persistent cache, the bigger concern with the crash for me is centered around database corruption. Does this help minimize that? And there's the gold question for the whole hour, right?
Yeah, that's exactly our intention here, is that we know that corruption is kind of finicky and that it doesn't ever play by the rules you expect it to, but we know that one way to get a corrupt file, does stem from the sudden loss of cache. And so in that sense, we're taking away one possible source of corruption here by preserving it. But I don't think I would feel comfortable to say that your file can't ever get corrupt or anything like that.
Yeah.
We're just making steps towards, making that happen less often.
My statement to Alex would be, and then there's another good question here right on the great audience. So live participation is excellent here. Here's the deal, and I've talked about this with Wim and Jacob Taylor. So if you're a serious FileMaker administrator and you take your job seriously, for the time being, I would just restore from the backup. Okay. However, this feature is really great for the people who run a FileMaker server. They get it running and then they walk off and never think about it ever again. And turning it on for them is not a bad idea because those people will historically turn on auto open databases even if they were just crashed. And so, and that's the road to hell. So the rub is if you enable the persistent cache for the people who don't have active administrators and they just wing it, right? This is going to help those people live a much happier life. Does that make sense?
Right.
At least in the near term. Is that, so it's kind of this, are you actively managing it? If you're not, if Paul or Alex, if you are actively managing your FileMaker server, then maybe continue to run the way you are for now. Let this air itself out. But if you're not an active administrator, then persistent cache seems like it will help minimize the possibility of a bad thing happening, right? So David says, what happens if a user block? Okay, so we check. Okay, so back up. So we're using, everyone's 20 people using FileMaker database. We turn that on. We turn that checkbox on. Meanwhile, someone who is already logged on is running a script. What happens, Connor?
Everything is good. Nothing is interrupted. I guess I do want to mention that perform script on server is, you can even send new perform script on servers sessions from an existing connected user. However, schedules, if a schedule isn't already running, like a new schedule won't fire off while this is running. So that is worth mentioning.
That's a really, okay, so David, initially I saw that question, I'm like, what question is that? But then I realized, David, that's a great question.
Yeah.
Because PSOSs are technically considered, when a PSOS session runs, that's a new user. It is. And so is SASE.
So that was a deliberate choice we made to allow those anyway for PSOS, even though it's technically a session. But yeah, the schedules, so this includes backup schedules. So that's maybe something else to just keep in mind, is that as long as block new users is on, backup schedules are not running. So that's, any new schedule that fires off is not going to be allowed.
Yeah, because the schedule is going to, whether it's not a user or not, it's going to occupy, it's going to block a file from being closed, which is the intent. So if you check this down here, you want to cause your FileMaker file to close down, right? So we're over here. And the idea is, in order to close the file down, everyone has to get the hell out of it, right?
Yeah.
And that means that PSOSs can finish, but SASEs are going to, won't allow to go forward, and backups won't allow until everyone drifts away and they all disconnected. Then as an administrator, you can do what you need to do. And then when you're good, then you re-enable it or whatever you're going to do. So other questions? That's a good session. We're at top of the hour. I know these guys probably have a hot meeting to go to with the CEO of Claris or something. I'm sure they have important things to do, but a great live stream session. Connor, anything else you want to hit? I don't know if you have a hard stop, but anything else you want to hammer on?
I think Doug mentioned already that, about upload download from the admin API. I guess in my mind, that's just another one of the most exciting things about this next release is, being able to automate that flow a little better. I know it's not part of admin console, but it's just in my assessment, that's an exciting one too.
So they turned on, and so that's kind of his favorite feature. I'll just call it his favorite feature. So what it is that, once again, a lot of these improvements under the hood, once again, this lifecycle management stuff with hashes and the XML and all this sort of stuff, Claris is putting the tools in there so the tool developers in the community can build better tools. So Automatic and Devin and 360 Deploy and all these different tools that are out there, they can take advantage of it. So now those tools, including Klaus Levent wants to come on the show and talk about his missing admin tool, and it does a server admin API calls. So what is this new feature to allow someone like Klaus Levent he builds a front end and it can tell the FileMaker server to download the file? Is that what this is?
Yeah, but there's two different endpoints, one for upload, one for download. So you can do both now from admin API.
Ooh, that's nice. So while it's not like right in here somewhere as a button that says do this, the tools manufacturers can interact and make it happy. So there you go.
That's right.
I wish it could be a green checkbox. There we go. So
one more thing I want to mention: these logs are on by default now. That was also something that we had requested. So
Okay,
And they
so I have
were-
a question. Top call, you says that used to be a test question on the certification test like 20 years ago, and it says if you enable top call statistics, what might happen? The answer was performance might go off a cliff. So I guess you made it speedy.
I
or
guess we
something?
changed our minds.
So it's no longer
Yeah.
a major performance hit, I guess.
Yeah, I think the reality is more with more data available, we are not concerned about the performance hit. That this is, if there's any at all, it's not anything that really should be worried about. And the value here is that the first time an issue happens, you've got logs available to look at. You don't have to wait for it to happen again.
Just take a minute or two and tell everyone what a top call statistic is. What is it?
Every like 30 seconds, the top 25 most expensive or heaviest operations happening on the server get written to this log, and so you can see who did it, what the operation was, and sometimes which file and which table and which field it was on.
So we do a search on an unstored calculation with attached to a summary field with 5 million records, and the sales department does that because that's something the sales would do. Then it says sales has done this, and it tells them to go beat them up and beat them with a stick and tell them to quit doing it. Or you could build your database without an unstored calculation, right?
Yeah.
It's actually evidence of what, as a developer, maybe you did wrong or you could do better.
So we're just final mention. That's all I got.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That's very great. Yeah.
Well, that being said, we will see you here tomorrow to talk about Let's Encrypt with Wim DeCourt and Jacob Taylor.
Yeah, Let's Encrypt. So more FileMaker Server shenanigans tomorrow. That'd be awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good one. Goodbye.
Thank you, everyone.
No.